Brennan.
How are you?
I'm good. Good.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. So tell me a little bit about you and your life now and where you're from and wherever you want to jump in at.
I grew up in upstate New York, and we lived there till I was about 8 years old. Lived in a perfect neighborhood. It was kind of like one entrance into all the different cul-de-sacs, so everybody kind of knew everyone. Everyone went to the same church, same school. We had lots of friends in the neighborhood, and it was just sort of a picturesque kind of scenario to grow up in. I have one older sister and two parents who are still alive, so yeah, it kind of was an ideal place to grow up in. And then in 1984, we moved to Cincinnati.
So what happened when you were, I think it was 6 years old?
Yeah,
So talk about that a little
yeah.
bit.
So there were two male babysitters that sexually abused me around the ages of 6 and 7. Um, I remember vividly um, the first boy. I don't recall actually what happened, um, but I do remember having him over to our house with his parents. We confronted that this thing had happened. He was very remorseful, and we just sort of went on from there. Fortunately, I don't recall what happened, but I know something did that was inappropriate. And all this came out when my mom was reading me a book called Good Touch, Bad Touch. So as she got towards the end of the book, I think she had said, "Hey, has anything like this ever happened to you, or has anyone tried to kind of come on to you like this?" And I sort of opened up in that moment and told her that, you know, some things had happened, which kind of started that first confrontation that I just talked about. And then the second one was the one that did the most harm, but was actually never confronted. So the perpetrator that sexually abused me several times lived up the hill from me, babysat me and my sister. His father had dealt with some health issues. So my parents were concerned if they brought this up to them that his health could even deteriorate more. So they regret this to this day. But unfortunately, people don't always know what to do or how to act around these situations. And I think that was one of those situations where they just didn't know what to do. Um, and so that always kind of gave me a sense of that this thing just never was like handled properly, and I was just supposed to kind of just deal with it on my own. So fast forward, I don't know, a handful of months, we ended up moving to Cincinnati, and that just sort of put all of that, behind us. Unfortunately, that stuff just doesn't go away,
Mm.
and sticks with all of us our entire lives for the most part.
So you moved to Cincinnati. You go through some counseling at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So your mom had found a counselor, obviously wanted to move you to a place of processing the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
What was your experiences like early on with therapy, and
Yeah.
how did that all work?
A lot of it was just me sitting in a room, not doing a whole lot of talking. The counselors trying to pry things out of me. In the end, probably just felt like a waste of time and a waste of money. Unfortunately, I think that's all too common. That a lot of these counselors say they have expertise in this area of sexual trauma, but they don't. It's sort of a check the box sort of deal. And as I've learned through lots of different resources and experts, that you really do need to be trained well in this topic to help people through this process. I also think I was probably a little too young to even understand like what had happened. I knew that I was um, confused. I knew I was terrified, especially by the perpetrator that did those harmful things to me. I remember him driving around the neighborhood, and just sort of that blood boiling feel that you have, and him telling me that, hey, if I tell someone, he's going to kind of hurt me, kind of thing. And that's very typical for people to put on the victims. Um, and yeah, I don't think I was even prepared to like talk about it or even like know how to process it
Mm.
with someone that was in the counseling environment.
So fast forward a little bit into high school. Talk about that a little bit. So.
Yeah, I didn't have a ton of confidence going into a lot of situations, sports, school, which I think a lot were directly connected to that. I just at an early age just was very confused, and I didn't know um, why this had happened. And so it put me in a lot of awkward situations, I feel like. And I started to manifest a lot of those feelings with anger. And I wasn't sharing this information with anyone. It's really hard to share with your friends, especially when you're in grade school and high school and college, because a lot of your friends don't even know what to do with it. And you need to have that trust to actually tell them. So I remember vividly a time where I ripped the door off the hinges of my bedroom. My mom and my sister were at the base of the stairs, just terrified, kind of looking in my eyes, and that was a low point for sure. Um, and as I got into high school and college, I would say drinking was a big just mechanism for me to kind of cope with the pain that I had felt and experienced. Um, that was just sort of bottling up. So I was getting into a lot of just reckless behavior, whether that was hooking up or drinking a lot to the point of passing out, um, getting behind the wheel, wrecking multiple cars. Fortunately, I never got a DUI or killed anyone or killed myself. But it was just this like ongoing, perpetual thing that, like, well, I guess just this is how it is, and this is just who I am. I'm a kind of party guy, but on the inside, I was just getting super empty, and
Hmm.
just meaning for life just felt like, man, is this all I got? I remember driving in the car with my mom at one point in high school after getting in some trouble with the police, and I said, like, man, I just wish I would just fly through this windshield, you know. And while that was just a feeling in the moment, to look back and know that like that was something I would say, just as I'm glad I've come a long way,
Yeah.
because that was a dark spot for me, and I think that um, just yeah, the compression of all these feelings just makes you want to explode, you know. What do you do with that when the world just tells you to like get over it or move on or just figure this thing out on your own? And um, I've learned that community is a big part of getting through all this.
So you told someone like you'd been drinking a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and you admitted for the first time to someone what had happened while I don't want to
Yeah, that was
just
my
jump in
best
a
friend, and we were walking back from a party. Both had way too many cocktails, I'm sure, and I'm sure that's where my guard came down to say, like, okay, maybe I just like finally tell my friend. And so I did, and he was shocked, like most people would be. But then we really didn't. We woke up the next day and just acted like it never came up. And I think that's fairly typical, unfortunately. They call it the silent epidemic. People just don't talk about it. Um, when people experience it, they just don't even know where to go. So they just end up finding coping mechanisms to get through. That could be drugs, that could be alcohol, that could be sex, that could be work, that could be lots of different things. And I sort of tried out all of those, um, to where I just got to a place after college. I was like, man, there's got to be more than this. And that's when I moved back home to Cincinnati. I was out in California for a few years, and got connected to Crossroads. And I think that's where God started to kind of just strip away all those things that I assumed were part of my identity. For a while, I was, I think, angry at God of like, why did this happen? Why me? And then I
yeah.
realized through that group that actually God was weeping alongside of me the entire time this was happening.